Scalpel and Shadow, The Double Life of Dr. John. The respected healer. In the heart of Abuja, where glass towers gleamed against the African sun and sirens blended with the hum of progress, one name echoed through hospital corridors and elite gatherings alike: Dr. John Ifeanyi Nwosu. To many, he was nothing short of a miracle worker. A consultant surgeon at Grace Life Hospital, one of the capital's most prestigious private medical institutions, John was known for his steady hands, calm demeanor, and uncanny ability to save lives where others failed. At 42, Dr. John was the poster child for Nigerian excellence. He had studied medicine at the University of Ibadan, graduating top of his class, before securing a residency in the United Kingdom. He returned with accolades, membership in the Royal College of Surgeons, and a heart for serving his people. Patients traveled from across the country to consult with him. Even presidents had his number on speed dial. At home, he was no less perfect. His wife, Chioma, a stunning and accomplished lawyer, was often seen beside him at charity functions and church fundraisers. They lived in Maitama in a 5-bedroom duplex surrounded by manicured lawns and high walls. To neighbors and colleagues, theirs was the kind of life others could only dream about. Successful careers, loving marriage, no children yet, but they said they were trusting God. What no one knew was that behind John's soft-spoken voice, his spotless white coat and gentle smile, lay a predator. A cold-blooded killer who operated under the very roof of the hospital he swore to protect. He didn't just take lives, he calculated them, selected them, watched them bleed out on his table, and covered it all under a web of paperwork, falsified diagnoses, and death certificates no one ever questioned. He didn't just kill, he perfected it. But in the beginning, no one could have suspected, not even Chioma. Echoes in the operating room. The first patient John killed was a man named Tunde. He had late-stage pancreatic cancer and was barely hanging on when his family flew him in from Kano. The prognosis was poor, but they believed in Dr. John's gift. John smiled gently when he read the file. "We'll do our best," he had said, masking the thrill that crawled beneath his skin. Something in him stirred when he saw the helplessness in Tunde's eyes, when he imagined what it would feel like to take the man's life slowly, deliberately, and have no one question it. The surgery was routine. Remove part of the pancreas, clear out necrotic tissue. But halfway in, John made a cut he knew would end it all. He sliced into the hepatic artery, a mistake no trained surgeon would ever make. Tunde bled out in minutes. The nurse gasped. John, unfazed, calmly shouted, "He's crashing! Clamp the artery! Suction! Get me blood!" He performed CPR for formality's sake, then called it 2:47 p.m. By the time the family was brought in, he looked exhausted and grief-stricken. "We did everything we could," he said, placing a hand on the daughter's shoulder. "I'm so sorry." The nurses, confused but loyal, said nothing. The hospital trusted John. Mistakes happened. No one asked questions. That was the beginning. Over the next 4 years, John would kill 14 patients, most terminal, some not. He justified each one to himself in twisted logic, relieving pain, ending suffering. But it wasn't mercy. It was power. The rush of being able to hold life in his hands and take it, silently, perfectly. The mask slips. Chioma noticed the change gradually. Her husband still brought her flowers on Fridays, still held her hand during church services, still made breakfast on Sundays. But there were moments, fleeting but sharp, when his eyes darkened, his voice cold, and something about his touch felt clinical, detached. He had grown distant. He often came home late, claiming emergencies, though his clothes had no signs of blood or fatigue. He had nightmares, strange, violent ones. Once, he murmured in his sleep, "Clamp the vein. Let it go." And Chioma jolted upright, watching him with fear. Then came the hospital gala. A nurse, slightly drunk, whispered to Chioma, "Your husband is a magician in surgery." But some of the things I've seen—" She paused, then laughed nervously. "Never mind. He's just intense." Chioma smiled, but her heart had begun to tremble. One night, while John was away for an emergency procedure, Chioma entered his study. She had never snooped before, but curiosity and fear overwhelmed her. Inside the bottom drawer, beneath folders of hospital documents, she found an old leather notebook, locked, but the key was taped to its back. She opened it. Her blood ran cold. Each page was a detailed account of a patient, not in medical language, in disturbing clinical prose. Patient 008, arterial cut. Watched the light go out. Satisfaction 810. Another, patient 012, too quick, must refine timing. There were dates, names, descriptions of deaths that were never recorded as suspicious. There were even sketches, veins, arteries, incisions. Chioma slammed the book shut, heart pounding. It couldn't be, not John, not her husband, but the truth sat heavy in her lap. And John was on his way home. Chioma's suspicion. Chioma didn't sleep that night. She hid the notebook in her bag and paced the living room in silence until John returned. When he walked in, smiling and removing his tie, she felt a wave of nausea. He leaned in to kiss her. She flinched. "Something wrong?" he asked, eyes narrowing. She forced a smile. "Just a migraine." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Go lie down. I'll get you something." She watched him head to the kitchen. The same hands that made her tea were the ones that had written those cold words. Those hands had held scalpels like weapons and taken lives. And now he was preparing her peppermint tea. She didn't touch it. Over the next few days, Chioma lived a double life. By day, she played the role of supportive wife. By night, she scanned the notebook obsessively. She took pictures, made backups, sent an anonymous email to her private Gmail account. Her training as a lawyer kicked in. She began documenting everything: phone calls, hospital shifts, suspicious deaths, even matching obituary announcements in newspapers. But paranoia grew. Was he watching her? Did he know? Then something terrifying happened. The notebook disappeared. She had hidden it beneath the spare tire in her car trunk. One morning, she opened it and found it gone. No signs of forced entry. Nothing else was taken. She confronted John that evening, subtly. "Have you been in my car?" He didn't look up from his iPad. "Yes, I refilled your wiper fluid." That night, she locked her bedroom door. The last confrontation. The breaking point came 3 days later. Chioma came home early from work, heart racing. She had scheduled a meeting with a trusted friend at the National Human Rights Commission, a former police officer turned investigator. She had gathered enough to raise alarms. She just needed one more thing: a digital copy of her email thread, which she'd hidden on a USB drive behind a bookshelf. But when she entered the living room, John was sitting there, waiting. No TV, no phone, just him, in silence. "Welcome," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. Her eyes scanned the room. Nothing looked out of place, yet everything felt wrong. "You've been busy," he said, holding something in his hand. It was the USB stick. Chioma froze. "I found it this morning. Interesting files." He tilted his head. "Why, Chioma?" Her voice trembled. "You kill people, John. Patients who trust you. I know. I read it all." He stood slowly. "And what were you going to do? Go to the police? Destroy me? After all we've built?" Her anger overpowered her fear. "You think I care about that house, your reputation? You're a monster. You belong behind bars." A long silence. Then John sighed. "I wish you hadn't said that." He stepped toward her. She turned to run, but he was faster. He slammed her against the wall, one hand on her mouth, the other reaching into his pocket. She scratched, kicked, bit, but John was prepared. A sharp sting, a syringe in her neck. The world spun. Darkness wrapped around her. The last thing Chioma saw was John's face, emotionless, cold, as he whispered, "I'm sorry," covering the crime. Chioma's death was announced as a tragic accident. "Brain aneurysm," John told the world. "She collapsed at home. I tried CPR. It was too late." The funeral was grand. White tents, sobbing family, hundreds of sympathizers. John wept publicly, gave speeches about love and loss. Friends clung to him. The media hailed his strength. No autopsy was requested. Who would question Dr. John? Behind the scenes, he disposed of the body with precision, embalmed quickly, cremated as per her wishes. He even donated money in her name, established a scholarship fund for female law students. He smiled through it all. But the crack had formed. Someone had noticed. The patient files. Dr. Bayo was a young surgical registrar assigned to work under John. Brilliant and ambitious, Bayo idolized him, at first. But over time, he began to notice oddities. Patients who were stable suddenly deteriorating, post-op reports that didn't match surgery logs, and death certificates filled out before official time of death. Then came the case of Mrs. Udoka, a 36-year-old with a minor gallbladder issue, routine procedure. She was doing well, chatting post-op. Hours later, she coded and died. Bayo checked her file. No complications were noted. The autopsy said internal bleeding, but no explanation was given. John had signed off. That night, Bayo stayed back and accessed archived files. A pattern emerged, 14 similar cases over 4 years. Most were under John. All died in strange circumstances. No inquiries, no accountability. Bayo went to the hospital board. They brushed him off. So he went to the police. The unraveling. Detective Funka Adesanya of the FCT Homicide Division had seen her share of twisted cases, but this one chilled her. A beloved surgeon? Serial killer? It sounded absurd, but the files Bayo presented were compelling. They launched a covert investigation. Patient records were reviewed, families interviewed. The forensic unit quietly re-examined preserved samples. Then came the discovery. Traces of potassium chloride in several exhumed bodies. A drug that could stop the heart instantly and disappear in autopsy unless specifically looked for. The notebook photos from Chioma's email added fuel to the fire. They had enough. The arrest. John was arrested in his office, mid-surgery prep. He didn't resist. He smiled as they handcuffed him. "Took you long enough," he whispered to Funka. The news exploded. "Nigeria's top surgeon a serial killer?" Headlines screamed. Patients wailed. Colleagues were stunned. John confessed during interrogation. Cold. Detailed. No remorse. He described the thrill of controlling death, the power, the perfection. When asked about Chioma, he only said, "She made a choice. The trial and legacy. The trial was the most sensational in Nigerian history." The courtroom overflowed. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, victim names, methods, journal entries, forensic matches, even hospital CCTV footage. John's defense argued insanity, but psychiatric evaluation found him sane, highly intelligent, highly dangerous. He was convicted on 15 counts of first-degree murder, including his wife's. Sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, he smiled as the sentence was read. "Now you know the real me." In prison, he remained silent. No interviews, no visitors. The public was left grappling with the question, how could such brilliance hide such darkness? Chioma's scholarship fund lives on. Bayo now leads a new watchdog organization for medical accountability in Nigeria. But the name, Dr. John Chika, remains burned in memory. A cautionary tale that evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a white coat. Echoes of the past. In the weeks following his arrest, Abuja buzzed with endless theories about how a man so loved could have hidden such horror. But what no one knew was that John's darkness didn't start in Grace Life Hospital. It began long ago, in a cramped one-room apartment in Aba, where John grew up the only child of a broken home. His father, Obinna, was a failed trader, angry and volatile. His mother, Ebele, was a school teacher. Gentle, quiet, beaten often. John witnessed violence from the age of 4. When he was 6, he watched his father slam his mother against a wall for disrespecting him. She died the next morning. No autopsy, no justice. John stopped crying that year. He began dissecting lizards and birds in secret, not out of cruelty, at first, but fascination. What made them move? What made them stop? When he got into secondary school, he begged to be placed in the science class. The biology lab became his church. A teacher once caught him calmly slicing open a frog, alive. When asked why, John had said, "I wanted to see how long it would live without a heart." The teacher said nothing, just sent him to the principal, who gave him a warning. He graduated top of his class. A marriage built on lies. Chioma had fallen in love with John during their NYSC year in Benin City. He was soft-spoken, driven, and seemed different from the arrogant medical interns she knew. He never raised his voice, always listened, made her feel seen. They married 2 years later, and she thought she had found her anchor. But slowly, cracks formed. John was never truly present. He rarely discussed his childhood, never showed photos. He hated funerals and never cried at them. Once, at a burial, he left halfway through and later said, "Grief is just weakness in motion." Chioma laughed it off then. But now, looking back from the grave, if she could, it would all make sense. Inside Cell 13. Kuje Prison was no place for a man like Dr. John, but he adapted quickly. He kept to himself, read medical journals, never joined gangs, never prayed. Inmates feared him, not for muscle or power, but because of the rumors. They called him Dokita Oku, the death doctor. Once, an inmate tried to threaten him. John looked at him with cold eyes and said, "You want to die? I can show you how to do it painlessly." The man never bothered him again. The interview that never aired. A journalist from Channels TV, Amakandu, was granted a rare interview with John. He was calm, hands folded, white prison uniform pristine. "Why did you kill them?" she asked. John looked at her with a faint smile. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." He leaned forward. "You think saving lives is noble, but people lie to themselves. We all die. I just gave them an efficient exit. No more pain, no false hope." "And Chioma?" For the first time, his expression faltered. "Chioma was different. She loved me. But love is dangerous when it turns to fear." He refused to say more. The station never aired the interview. It was too disturbing. Whistleblowers and reforms. Dr. Bayo became a national figure. He was offered a government role to help overhaul Nigeria's medical ethics framework. A new department, the Medical Oversight and Mortality Auditing Commission, MOMAC, was formed. Hospitals began logging surgery cameras. Deaths flagged for autopsy required third-party witnesses. Even nurses were trained to speak up without fear. Still, Bayo never stopped asking himself, what if I hadn't spoken up? How many more would have died? Hidden victims. 6 months after John's conviction, a woman came forward. Her name was Sarah. Her sister died under John's care in 2016, a routine appendectomy gone wrong. She had always suspected something was off, but was dismissed at the time. Now, she had proof. An anonymous tip arrived in her inbox. A photo of her sister's name in John's notebook with the words, "Sloppy cut, felt rushed." Sarah wept, but she also sued the hospital and then won. One by one, more families came forward. The death toll rose to 23, the mind of a killer. A psychological profile was conducted on John by Dr. Mof Eid, Nigeria's top criminal psychologist. Her report described him as a high-functioning narcissist with sociopathic tendencies. He felt nothing for his victims, only for control. His profession gave him the perfect cover: respected, trusted, never questioned. But the most chilling part of the report read, "He did not kill because of trauma or rage. He killed because he could, because it gave him meaning." Chioma's legacy. In 2024, a new wing of the University of Abuja Law faculty was opened, the Chioma Nwosu Center for Justice and Ethics. Chioma's former boss, Barrister Ifeoma Odili, gave a stirring speech. She stood for what was right, even when it cost her everything. Her life was taken, but her voice speaks through all who refuse to be silent. John was not mentioned, but her story remained in every plaque, every scholarship, every student who walked those halls. The letter. 1 year into his sentence, John wrote a letter. It was addressed to Bio. Dear Doctor, you did the right thing. They were all going to die anyway. I just helped them leave early, efficiently, cleanly. You think you saved them by stopping me, but death is inevitable. One day maybe you'll understand. J. Bio burned the letter. The end of the scalpel. John died in prison 3 years later. Heart failure. Some said it was karma. Others believed he took his own life using smuggled medication. No one claimed the body. He was buried in an unmarked grave outside Abuja. No ceremony. No prayers. The man who once played God in operating rooms was reduced to a forgotten name. But in whispered conversations and late-night true crime podcasts, his story still haunts Nigeria. A chilling reminder that the worst monsters don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes they wear stethoscopes. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.